Good morning, folks. If you're getting here early, thank you. Please familiarize yourselves with the controls of this live event and take a look at various options. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. We'll see you right around 10:30. Good morning, and welcome to today's virtual event. I'm your host, Lenny Orlov. If you're joining us online, live or on YouTube, go ahead and check out the closed captioning feature by clicking on the gear under the video and selecting one of 7 languages: Arabic, Chinese, English, Korean, Russian, Spanish, or Vietnamese. Seattle Human Services is one of the few, if not the only, city department to offer real-time captioning in 6 languages, in addition to English, as part of Age-Friendly Seattle's virtual event. It's the first of the month, so here's a quick primer on what these have to offer. If you're new to our YouTube channel, by the way, please click the subscribe button and the bell to be notified when Age-Friendly Seattle's virtual events and other videos are uploaded. This programming is offered as one of the ways to help older adults stay safely connected to and be informed about community and government resources during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are live with Close to Home or the Civic Coffee Hour every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Time, with the exception for the 5th Thursday of the month, like this month, and major holidays. Special events in collaboration with other departments and organizations also take place periodically. For example, on October 23rd, which happens to be Friday, at 10 a.m., we're very excited to host Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin with an update on her proposed budget. And on October 30th, which is a Friday, we'll have the 3rd and final LGBTQ and Two-Spirit panel for 2020. This time, it's going to be on BIPOC communities' participation in vaccine trials. Regardless of topic, all of our online programs are accessible from the same virtual event hub, bit.ly/Age-Friendly Live. No spaces, but each word is capitalized. Phone option is also available for live events. And we invite you to visit this same URL anytime. You'll find information on upcoming events and a playlist with all the previous episodes, also with subtitles in all 7 languages. And next week, on the stories of health, tech, and resilience, we'll hear from 2 men representing Seattle's African descent population, Dr. Ben Abe and Paul Kimani. At Age Friendly Seattle, we proclaim that Black Lives Matter and are committed to elevating the voices of immigrant and refugee elders of color. We hope that you'll tune in on Thursday, October 8th at 10:30 a.m. or watch this important conversation later on YouTube. Just 1 week later, on the 15th, which is the 3rd Thursday in October, we will continue in the same vein by welcoming Emmanuel Ndaisenga, one of King County representatives on Washington State Refugee Advisory Council. I also sit on the council, so it's a special treat to be hosting the Civic Coffee Hour with Emmanuel and Sarah Peterson, who coordinates the council. Sarah is the chief of Washington State DSHS Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance. And Age Friendly Seattle is really looking forward to having her as a guest on the Coffee Hour again this year. So save the date, bookmark bit.ly/agefriendlylive, and tell a friend about this opportunity for civic engagement, this time at the state level. Finally, on to today's close-to-home presenters. We'll first hear about labor standards from Darius Foster, followed by Lisa Mayfield with important tips for solo agers. Our guests will each have a total of 15 minutes, 10 to present and 5 for questions. In the interest of time, we ask that you go ahead and leave a comment right away with anything you'd like them to address, even while they're still presenting. On the live show, each time we stop for the Q&A, we'll always go to the phones first, followed by as many online questions as we have time for. My City of Seattle colleagues, Andrea Yip and Michael Taylor-Judd, will gather all of your input and pass it along to our guests, who will either respond on the live broadcast or in the YouTube comment when the video is uploaded. You'll also get the presenters' contact information in case you wanted to reach out to them directly. And with any questions related to aging or disability services, or aging or disability, not necessarily services, you are invited to call 1-844-348-5464 and speak to a Community Living Connections advocate. What they can do is locate a wide range of resources, including food, meals, and other services. The call is free, interpretation is available upon request, and services offered are professional, confidential, and most are also free of charge. Again, that number is 1-844-348-5464. You may also visit them on the web at communitylivingconnections.org to see the list of participating organizations in this network that's nearby your neighborhood or community, and learn about the full range of services that they offer. Again, communitylivingconnections.org. So, first up on today's presentation is Darius Foster. And for Darius, I do have an introduction here. Darius serves as the Outreach Manager for the Seattle Office of Labor Standards. He is responsible for the development and implementation of long and short-term outreach and engagement strategies for Seattle businesses and workforce. Darius provides expert-level technical assistance to employers, HR personnel, payroll providers, back-office support professionals, and legal counsel on Seattle labor standards. He also manages a team of contract specialists that oversee over $4 million in contract funds to provide labor standards education and assistance to workers and business owners. Prior to joining the Office of Labor Standards, Darius was a strategic advisor for the Purchasing and Contracting Services Division in the city's Financial and Administrative Services Department. He focused on procurement policy research and solutions for women and minority-owned business enterprises to engage in contract opportunities with the City of Seattle. He has experience in partnership building, contract compliance, program management, and policy research. Darius holds a BA in political science from Western Carolina University and an MBA from Queen's University in Charlotte, North Carolina. Not only did I live in Charlotte and at least 4 other cities in North Carolina over the past few decades, but Darius and I are on the same interdepartmental team here at the City of Seattle. The goal of that team is to make sure the city continues to fulfill its commitment to increasing language access in the communities that we serve. So Darius, thank you so much for being here today. Please remember to unmute your microphone. You're live on Close to Home.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lenny, for that introduction. You know, I wasn't aware that you grew up or you lived in North Carolina for some time. We'll have to connect on that. Good morning to everyone here. I am happy to be presenting to you all. I wanted to definitely thank Lenny and his team, HSD Human Services Department, for hosting this webinar as part of the all-age friendly Seattle program, the Close to Home version or section of it. We're just going to go ahead and dive right in. I think I have controls of the PowerPoint. Is that correct, Lenny?
Actually, if you tell me to advance, I will go ahead and do that.
Wonderful. Okay. So we can go ahead and proceed to the next slide. So what is the Seattle Office of Labor Standards? Well, the Seattle Office of Labor Standards is a City of Seattle department that was established in 2015. It was established to implement and enforce the city's labor laws. The mission of the office is rooted in workplace equity, and Seattle labor laws cover employees who work within the city limits, regardless of where the employer is located. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what laws does the Office of Labor Standards enforce? Well, currently, OLS enforces 15 labor laws, right? For those of you who are joining by phone, this slide includes a list of 11. I said 14 because the last one we kind of packed together. And so it covers hotel employee protections, but it's 4 separate laws. For just to make it simpler to understand, I wrote it out that way. These laws range from minimum wage to paid sick and save time, and as I mentioned earlier, hotel employee protections. I will not read all of the laws that we have listed on this slide, but I will say most employers, assuming that they have employees who work in Seattle, will be covered under minimum wage, wage theft, paid sick and save time, and fair chance employment laws. More than half of the laws that OLS enforces are industry specific. And so when I say industry specific, just because you own a business and you have employees that work in the city doesn't automatically mean you're covered by a labor law. One good example, and I'll revert back to hotel employee protections, this law in particular only applies to hotel employers. Right? So if you're not a hotel employee, you wouldn't be covered under this law. Another example of a labor standard that we implement and enforce is domestic workers, right? And these are geared towards hiring entities. Usually households who hire gardeners, cooks, or nannies, or home health care workers would be covered under this law. So if you're a business that's in food service or retail, you would not be covered under domestic workers. Or if you were an employee that worked under food or retail, you would not be covered or protected by the laws or the provisions of the domestic worker law. Okay. Some of the laws may overlap or seem contradictory to state or federal laws. For example, minimum wage law exists in every level of government. You have a federal minimum wage, you have a state minimum wage, and you even have a local minimum wage, the Seattle minimum wage. Washington State also has paid sick and safe leave and fair chance employment laws, similar to the city of Seattle. Labor laws protect workers. When there's a conflict between federal, state, and local laws related to worker rights, the law that provides the highest level of protection to employees is usually the law that's enforced. And so that's why Seattle is able to enforce a Seattle minimum wage, which is higher than the state and federal minimum wage across the country. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. OLS offers a range of services and resources to help employers comply with Seattle labor laws. These services and resources are private and free, but it's not just limited to employers. We also provide these services to workers as well. And they include general outreach and education, responding directly to employer and worker questions, investigations, the required workplace posters that most of you or many of you may see up in a place of business, rules that further define the law, templates to support compliance, and questions and answers documents, or commonly referred to as FAQs, to better understand the complexity of these laws. Next slide, please. Whenever there's a question that arises, either from a worker or an employer, we encourage folks to reach out to us. By most accounts, we are considered an enforcement agency, and so that's true, but we also have that outreach and education arm of the office, and that's my role. A lot of folks are not familiar that they can easily just give us a ring, shoot us an email, and ask for just general questions about the laws, and we'll be more than happy to help them. When someone contacts the office, especially if you happen to be a worker, you would be routed to the enforcement side of the office. Whatever you share with the intake officer is private and confidential information and doesn't go any further than that. If you are a worker who knows that your rights have been violated by your employer, you do not have to fear that your employer is going to be made aware of the contact that you made with our office. If you are an employer or a business owner that has questions about compliance or just very general questions to help you better understand the law, to get a better understanding for the law, you're routed to a business engagement specialist. That's someone on my team, a completely different side of the office. That conversation is private and free at no cost, and the employer can remain anonymous. Whatever is discussed is our goal to ensure that you have the information you need to make the appropriate decision. So for clarity, we provide guidance and not legal advice, okay? We will ask for employer name, contact information, and type of business. However, this information is only necessary or it interests us to ensure that we have a way to communicate back with an employer if there's any updates or changes to any laws, and to hold us accountable for who we are providing services to. Okay. Next slide, please, and final slide. Yep. So without further ado, I'll end it there. I will say that there's 3 different ways to contact our office. You can contact us directly at 206-256-5297, and I'm sure this information will be made available later on. You can email us directly at business.laborstandards@seattle.gov. And then you can send us a message through our online intake form. And for folks who are viewing this presentation, believe it or not, there's a hyperlink embedded in that line that says outline online intake form, but I will provide Lenny, or I have already, with the actual link so we can share that, so you can have access to that in the future. One thing that I'll like to end on is that, to mention is that OLS does not and will never ask about immigration status. And OLS will never consider immigration status when providing support to workers or businesses. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to address any questions that you may have now or even later. Thanks, Lenny.
Yeah, thank you, Darius. Appreciate the overview. Once again, this is a great time for folks watching online to type anything that's on your mind in the moderated Q&A live, or go ahead and leave a comment for us on YouTube. I was about to switch over to the telephones there, but it sure does look like that person just disconnected. So I guess they knew we were going to go to the phone lines next. In that case, let's check in with folks watching this online. And for that, I'm going to switch it over to Michael, one of our moderators.
Thanks, Lenny. We've got one question, I think, that just popped in, and folks can look in the chat for links to employee and employer inquiries that Darius wanted to share with us. The question for you that just came in is, how do you get this information out into the community? Thanks for the work you do, but this is the first I've heard of your work.
Thank you for that question. There's several ways that we attempt to disseminate information about labor standards to the business and worker community. One of the most common ways that we use is we contract with community-based organizations. So we have a business outreach and education fund, and we have a community outreach and education fund. The business outreach and education fund is geared towards labor standards outreach and education to businesses, specifically businesses historically disenfranchised business communities. For the COAF, Community Outreach and Education Fund, we contract with various organizations that work throughout Greater Seattle. And so some that come to mind that you may be familiar with is Fair Work Center, Casa Latina, El Centro de la Raza, API Chaya. These are some examples of the organizations that we contract with to engage the community about their rights issued by Seattle labor standards. I would also invite you to take the time to even reach out to me directly and let me know what community you're a part of, and perhaps see if one of our community-based organizations have a relationship with that community. At the very least, and something that I probably should have mentioned and failed to mention, is that as opposed to just answering questions that folks have for us, we also encourage folks to invite us out to their community to host presentations. So we can go out into the community and host presentations free of charge. We have language access support to help us, and that's one way that we can also engage with the community. So very good question. And I hope I provided better insight to that, but I would also, if you feel comfortable enough to connect with me, I would love to hear more about the community, your community, and how we can better inform your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. Let me jump in and ask a quick question while folks are typing their questions in online. I'm curious, how, if at all, I mean, I'm used to doing outreach. This is outreach of sorts as well, but I'm more used to going out in the community and doing in-person events as opposed to looking at a screen like what we're doing right now. What does outreach for your office look like now during the COVID-19 conditions?
Yeah, very good question, Lenny. So there's different forms of outreach that we engage in. We obviously have internal outreach and external outreach. And when I speak about internal outreach, I'm talking about the outreach that we conduct in-house. The folks, the staff of the office, piecing together various forms of content and material to send out using various platforms, social media, news outlets, website. Then we have external outreach, where we rely heavily on community-based organizations to really engage with the communities that they are closely aligned with. And I'll be quite honest, the best way that we found for this type of engagement to occur is to really engage folks individually, one-on-one, right? Unfortunately, due to the pandemic that we have at hand, that has not been able to be done as to an extent that we would like it to be. And so a lot of our community-based organizations is shifting to a more virtual model for engaging the community. And so they are being more innovative in the fact that they are collaborating with other programs, sometimes in conjunction with other city programs and maybe other community programs, to really bring together a comprehensive session of various information to better serve communities across the board. And so one example of that is we currently contract with the Ethnic Chambers of Commerce Coalition, who has partnered up with the Latino Community Fund to host a bilingual webinar for business owners that takes into account public safety and labor standards, among other things. So there's been more of a shift to use virtual platform and a lot of social media to get the word out there in light of this unfortunate pandemic that we're currently experiencing at the time. We have also in-house made an attempt or started to take the initiative to pre-record webinars related to various labor laws and posting those up on our website. Good question. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Darius. That's pretty impressive what you're doing in your office, and I wasn't aware of all of it. I'm looking forward to learning more about it. But that's all we have time for today. So I'd like to thank you for giving us an overview of the city's labor standards, and it's a complex, system, and the COVID-19 certainly brings a unique, set of challenges. But it sounds like you're really thinking it through. So again, thanks for being here. If you can stick around, and if there's more questions, as I mentioned, we will post them on the YouTube channel in the comments, and we'll let you know to respond. So as we continue to navigate this COVID-19 pandemic, I'd like to remind all of you about another resource currently available in 22 languages, coronavirus.wa.gov. According to this Washington State's coronavirus response website, staying home is still safest. And to ensure the state's safe start is successful, we're encouraged to stay as close to home as possible. But if we must go out, to please continue social distancing and wearing facial coverings, which is required statewide in public settings, both indoors and outdoors, when people are present in large numbers. Coronavirus.wa.gov has all the latest info on the state's response to COVID-19. You can also call at 1-800-525-0127 to reach their Washington Department of Health Assistance Hotline. That number again is 1-800-525-0127. One idea for Washington State residents on how to stay engaged while maintaining a safe social distance is to enroll in the Access program at the University of Washington. Starting tomorrow, October 2nd, residents of our state who are 60 and older can enroll in up to 2 university courses at a reduced cost, just $5 per course. To learn more about available classes and other details, please visit registrar.washington.edu/registration/access. That URL again is registrar.washington.edu /registration/access. Or you can call them Monday through Friday at 206-543-4000. That number again is 206-543-4000 between 10 a.m. and noon or between 1 and 4 p.m. An example of a class you could take is Atmospheric Sciences 101, an introduction to weather and climate, where you can learn the science behind the smoky air outside and much more. So we encourage you to build on and share your wisdom with other UW students virtually as you age. But right now, let us continue with close to home, stories of health, tech, and resilience. Our next guest, Lisa Mayfield, is one of the founders of a local organization called Aging Wisdom. Before coming to work for the city, I helped manage a small home care agency. Many of our caregivers enrolled in the continuing education course that Aging Wisdom offered for home care aides. Their director of marketing and communications, Carrie Pollock, happens to be a member of our Age-Friendly Community Coalition. She made an introduction to Lisa, and the rest is history. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today. We welcome you to the program. You're live and close to home.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Lenny, for having me and for your team and for all the work you and the city does on supporting healthy aging. And thank you for calling out my colleague, Carrie Pollock, who also helped assemble a lot of this information. So we all rely on great teammates like you are today. And Darius, thanks for sharing all of your information about the labor laws. Your team sure has a big job when you look at all the laws that you're overseeing. And when you were talking, it actually made me proud to live in a city that I think in many ways is a leader in labor laws and protecting employees. And I think that came out in your information. So go Seattle for being a leader in a lot of those laws. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about 8 tips for solo agers. So solo agers are people that when they think about aging and they think about who will be there to help take care of them, sometimes ask themselves, well, who is there to help me? It's somebody that typically doesn't have a spouse or a partner, whether they're a widow or single and didn't have children, or maybe had lost their children earlier in life. But I think the information actually applies to anybody who's aging, whether you have family or not. So I will kind of give an overview of things to be thinking about as you're looking ahead and planning for your aging. And my first slide kind of has the first 4 tips, and the first is legal documents. And Darius was talking a lot about laws related to employment. Well, in our work with aging, law also comes into place that legal documents are really one of the most important places to start when you think about your aging. Being able to complete some core documents, such as your power of attorney document. So that's naming who would help make decisions for you on your behalf if someday you're not able to, in regards to your health care and in regards to your finances. The other documents that are helpful are advance directives, or sometimes known as a living will, which is where you spell out at the end of your life how much care and help do you need? Do you want the doctors to kind of do everything and anything to keep you alive, or are you someone that is more hands-off, that if it comes to the point where I'm near the end of my life, I want to focus on comfort and not aggressive treatment options? And then the kind of the fourth piece of that legal planning is a will, which is usually what comes to mind first for people, and that's who will get your money or your belongings when you go. I would like to argue that the power of attorney documents and the advance directives are far more important than your will, because they're helping direct your life while you're still living. The next piece for planning ahead is thinking about finances. And someday, when we're older, most people will need some kind of help, and all help costs money. And so having an awareness of what your financial resources are is essential. Typically, it's thinking about what your income will be when you're retired and down the road, and what savings, if any, do you have to draw on. And the bigger your bucket of savings, probably the less worried and planning you need to do. The smaller that bucket, I think the more important it is to think ahead and plan. And so have some knowledge of, do I have a lot? Do I have a little? Do I have none? And then being able to find out how much would care cost. If I had care in my home, what would that cost? If I were moving to a retirement community, what might that cost? And be able to plan and think ahead about that. The third thing to think about when you're planning ahead for your aging is to think about your home and where you're living and what barriers or obstacles it might present. So kind of looking around where you're living in new eyes. Do you have stairs? Do you have a big yard that you'll need to maintain? Is your living space kind of large and a lot to keep up? If you're in an apartment, is there an elevator up to your unit? Are there stairs? To just thinking about how to navigate your space if mobility declines. And even if you had a wheelchair or walker, how might you navigate your space? And are there barriers to moving around? Also thinking about your bathroom. Can you easily access the shower or the tub where you would be getting clean? And if you were using a walker or a wheelchair, would you be able to navigate your bathroom? So thinking about how your physical space will work out when you need more care. And the fourth item is to think about your health and well-being. And the healthier we can keep ourselves now, the earlier we start taking care of ourselves, the easier aging will be and the more control you have over what your aging might look like. So this is when we think about eating well, and particularly exercise. More and more research is coming out, particularly about brain health and heart health, is the importance of exercise. And I think during COVID-19, many of us have realized the importance of exercise and trying to get out. Sometimes the best exercise can be just getting out for a walk. Of course, that's been a little bit challenging for us with our smoke, but being able to get outside, get fresh air, get moving. And if you're not able to walk, even doing chair exercise, any kind of moving around you can do with your muscles is really essential. Also, we read more and more about the importance of sleep. And I read an article this week just about how they're finding that the amount of sleep is almost a key ingredient to brain health. And it kind of makes sense. Is the way I try to think about it is your sleep is the time that your brain is resting. The rest of the time in our life, our brain, if your brain is anywhere near as crazy as mine, it's like always thinking, always churning, always doing something. And if you think about your muscles, if your muscles were constantly in motion, you would be exhausted and you would have muscle ache. And the same is true of your brain, but we often don't think of the need to rest our brain. And so that's what they're learning. Our sleep at night is your chance for your brain to rest, and your brain needs a certain amount of time to rest. And then another part of healthy aging is learning, challenging yourself to learn new things and make new neurons in your brain. And so Lenny, when you talked about the Access program at UW, I thought that was a perfect lead into what a fabulous way that we have here in our area to access such terrific learning at the University of Washington at such a low cost access point. So I think it's terrific to tap into the Access program at the University of Washington. And the next slide, if you'll move to that, is community. And just being mindful. I think COVID-19 has also brought home, particularly to me, is all of us realizing how essential human connection is and relationships and people. And I think prior to this pandemic, we all took that for granted. And when it was stripped away and we saw the impact on people's mental health, it's really emphasized how important community is. And the city of Seattle, all their work with Age-Friendly Seattle and doing things like this close to home program just speaks to how important community is. And I appreciate the city making that a focus and trying to connect people and creating such an accessible city. Which the next is thinking, when you're planning for your aging, thinking about transportation. I think another thing we take for granted, but what if someday you weren't able to drive? When people, if they get diagnosed with dementia, eventually being able to drive is no longer safe. And so how will you get around? How will you get to your hair appointment, your groceries, your doctor's appointments? Thinking about alternative ways to get places that you need to go. I think the next thing is just knowing that there's people around that can help you with all these questions and all these planning. There's people like me. We are called Aging Life Care Professionals, and we're consultants that work with older adults and families, whether it be problem solving current challenges with aging, whether it be thinking ahead and planning ahead about your aging. Elder law attorneys are another great resource in your planning. Your doctor is a great advisor. So kind of creating a team of people that can support you with your planning, particularly if you are a solo ager. And I can talk to you a little bit more when we get into the Q&A about how to access some of these resources and advisors. But the last thing I wanted to mention, probably pertinent to COVID-19, is thinking ahead about organizing a to-go bag. And that's thinking about, what if you suddenly had to go to the hospital unexpectedly? And most of us who are healthy don't give that a moment's thought, unless women who are about to have a baby, they always have their to-go bag. But the rest of us don't really think about having that. But with COVID, we're all vulnerable to needing to go to the hospital. So that's just organizing a bag that if you had to go to the hospital, what might you need, which is your medications, your doctors, if you have those legal documents, powers of attorney, advance directive, bringing your cell phone, a charger, your insurance card, your ID. Oh, thank you. I forgot to nudge you to show the next slide. So thank you. This is all here. So perfect. And thinking about personal items that you would want to bring: change of clothes, socks, undergarment, glasses, hearing aids, battery for the hearing aid. So thinking about just getting organized for the just in case. So planning ahead is everything. So often people don't plan ahead for aging, and there's unexpected crises that they're then scrambling. And when you're in a crisis or a medical emergency, often your choices get limited. So the more you can plan ahead and think ahead and take control of your aging, the better off you'll be and the more options available. So I forgot to pay attention where we were at in time, Lenny.
I think we should probably go ahead and go to questions at this point, if that's all right.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to advance to the next slide here with Lisa's contact information. And I'm going to turn it over to our other moderator, Andrea, because I believe there's a couple of questions there that folks are asking.
Hey, Lisa, thanks so much. Thanks, Lenny. So we do have a few questions. One is, what is the best way to find an attorney to help with those legal documents?
Yeah, terrific question. So a few resources I wanted to point out is, one is Sound Generations, which is a nonprofit organization in town, soundgenerations.org. They have a lot of resources related to aging, and one is some legal assistance program, all free of charge. They can also make referrals to other legal providers. Also, Lenny had shown the slide at the beginning of the program about the Community Living Connections line. They could also make referrals to legal assistance and legal aid. And then there's a whole class of attorneys called elder law attorneys, and their whole specialty is working with older adults. And I think they're a fabulous group of attorneys, the nicest attorneys that you'd ever meet. And there's a website in our state called, WAELA. It's the Washington Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, or www.waela.org, where you can find an elder law attorney in your area.
Thanks, Lisa. Another question we have. I am 61 and healthy. Would you recommend looking at LTC insurance, long-term care insurance, as a good percentage of people eventually will require long-term care?
That's a great question. So just in case people don't know what that is, there's some insurance called long-term care insurance, and it pays for care as you're older. So it can pay for caregivers coming into the home. It can pay for a retirement community. And you usually buy a certain amount. That's the amount of money you would get from this insurance per day. And then you can buy how long the coverage lasts, whether it be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, etc. The cost of care can be kind of staggering. And so trying to think about how you might be able to pay for care is important. And so if you don't have enough money to self-fund care, long-term care insurance is a good option to consider. It's quite expensive and gets more expensive over time. And so sometimes it's not realistic for people to buy long-term care insurance. But for people that have resources, the cost of the insurance is minimal compared to what cost of care would be. In general, they say that in your 50s is the ideal time to purchase that kind of insurance, because the younger you are, the lower the cost. But of course, that means you have a longer time to pay those premiums. So 61 is probably on the higher end of the time frame for buying that insurance, meaning the price point would be a lot higher. But I certainly think it's worth asking an agent and getting a quote, because it's never cost to get a quote, and to just, they can help you run some numbers, or your financial planner is, for you, does it make sense to consider that insurance? And if you're helping somebody else that's aging, it's a good question to ask them. Do they happen to have long-term care insurance? Often people forgot they have it, or they don't know what it is, or they're reluctant to tap into it. So you want to find out and take advantage of it. But for those people that have it, it can be a great resource.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, this is all that we have time for on this morning's program. If folks have additional questions, I would encourage you to keep typing them in the live Q&A, or wait until the video is uploaded on our YouTube channel and leave a comment there. Either way, we'll let our presenters know that you had asked a question. So I want to, at this stage, thank both Lisa and Darius for being here today, and for taking the time to talk about what you do and providing some tips to folks out there. I mostly, and let me not forget to thank my moderators today, Andrea and Michael. But still, most of all, I would like to thank all of you. You'll see, in addition to the Office of Labor Standards and Asian Wisdom, Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, well, that's because Darius and I talked about language access. That's who is driving that process with the city of Seattle. So we're, and that's how I learned about the Office of Labor Standards. I didn't know about it, having worked at the city for over 2 years. So definitely want to give them kudos. We want to make sure that those of you who are here today do tell your friends about these programs and about this opportunity to join our virtual community, either live or by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking the notification bell while you're there. Lisa mentioned Community Living Connections and actually Sound Generations, which is a member of that network. Certainly want to remind you all about this resource. Any aging or disability question, work practices, care management, even outside air safety, you can always reach out to them at 1-844-348-5464 or visit them on the web at communitylivingconnections.org. Thank you all again for sharing some of your wisdom with us today. Provided that, air quality in our region improves, we hope that you'll spend some time outdoors this weekend, and/or we'll continue finding other ways to stay socially and civically engaged, like by attending a virtual class or participating in virtual choir practice. And as always, we'll look forward to seeing you and your friends at the next Age Friendly Seattle virtual event. Take care, y'all.